Hey everybody, I'm Alex McClellan.
And I'm Mason McClellan.
And we're the Backtrack Brothers. Today we're going to be reviewing the movie Avatar, which was written and directed by James Cameron, who we just did a video on the Titanic. So we already know a little bit about our man James here, don't we? So just to give you an idea, there's a new format for us. We're going to start off with going over a spoiler-free review, talk about stuff that's not really integral to the story, and then we're going to launch into a total spoiler zone. We're going to talk about everything about the movie in detail. We're not going to go through the whole plot by any means. We're going to talk about the highlights, lowlights, all that type of stuff.
And then by the end, we're going to see if it still holds up and what we think of the movie overall.
So let's get started. First, we'll just run over the plot synopsis real quick. I'm going to read this because it's just a bunch of shit. So, so we follow Jake Sully. He's a paraplegic ex-Marine that's replacing his dead scientist brother in a project to research a planet called Pandora. And they need to attempt to connect with the native inhabitants for a reason that gets delved into later. Jake falls into a situation where he's forced to choose between protecting this new society he becomes a part of or his original race that he was raised in, which I think is a pretty powerful conflict for a character to go through, right? Yeah. So Mason, let's start with this. What do you know about Avatar? How did you hear about it? Do you have any inclinations going into watching it?
Yeah, so actually when I was, don't make fun of me for this, I was 5. I had the Cars 2 DVD. And right before the movie started on the DVD, they'd always play a few trailers to try and get these trailers engraved in your memory, want to get you to see the movie. And one of them was Avatar. And
Gotcha.
As a kid, I always thought it super weird, like what are all these blue people doing? I was always just thought they looked, you know, really weird. But so yeah, now is the first time I actually got to see it. And to me, the nav'i being blue and just being kind of shaped differently wasn't that big of an issue as it was to 5-year-old me.
Good. Do your friends have any background with this movie? Did anyone come up to you in your age group or like, hey, you guys hear about this movie Avatar? Is there any kind of like discourse about this movie in your generation?
Even with like the new one coming out, I don't think I think people just look at the blue people and be like, oh, that's a little bit creepy, and that's it. That's what they leave it at.
Interesting. So, when this movie came out in 2009, I was 18 years old. So I was kind of, you know, going into college, going to that period of my life, and this movie was like an event. It was a huge deal. Everyone wants to see this movie. Everyone got the 3D glasses, the blue and red glasses. They went, they sat, and really, to me, that experience of going to see that in the theater was more like a giant VR ride, or like, you know, or if you've ever been to like Disney or Hollywood Studios, like those, or Universal Studios, like those types of things where they have like the big rides that you get strapped in, it's like a giant screen and they shoot water or fumes or like other stuff. It felt like that type of experience instead of going to see a theatrical movie, right? And that was kind of like the appeal of Avatar when it first came out. So at my age range, everyone knows Avatar because it was just a big deal. Really, it's the type of movie, most people I would ask, nobody's really seen it for a second time. Everyone went and saw it in the theater, saw the big event. Cool, that was really a spectacle. But then after that, that was kind of the end of the discussion. Didn't really have any permeating impact on at least my age range that I know of. So just kind of give a little bit of context for both of our generations to this movie. All right, Mason, what are your thoughts on visual, soundtrack, score, those types of aspects of this film?
So I thought Pandora itself was beautiful, and I bet
gorgeous.
And
totally agree.
I bet in 3D it probably looked even better.
It was insane. Yeah.
But I thought, you know, that the whole world, it just looked colorful, it looked filled with life. It looked amazing. Yeah,
it was so eye-catching. It just really pops out, especially in contrast to the human civilization on their spaceships, which is all gray, black, very dour. The planet is so vibrant, it's so bright, it just breathes a lot of energy into the film, you know? And it's such, like I just said, a huge stark contrast from what we're dealing with in especially the first 20 minutes when you're just kind of in that human world, you know?
Yeah.
My favorite parts visually are all the action sequences, whether it's the chase sequences, whether it's kind of like the bigger battle sequences or when they're flying on the back of those monsters. Those are my favorite parts, and all of them, I think, visually live up to the action and sci-fi movies of today.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's where this movie really shows out, is the fact that the visuals in those sequences are as good as the modern Matrix movie or, you know, any of that type of stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
And that was another thing that I had in mind, is just like the explosions, the big, large ships, the creatures, everything just looked lifelike, and it looked really impressive, and I couldn't really tell what was CGI and what was practical effects in a CGI-filled movie, which is good for 2009.
Yeah, we're talking about, I mean, you know, people my age are probably thinking 2009, that's not that long ago, but it is. It's 13, 14 years ago we're talking about. And if you think about the production, that was years and years leading up to that release date. So they were really making this movie in 2006, 7, 8, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was really crazy cutting edge technology, even portraying those actors in the nav'i skin, which, you know, even though it doesn't look 100% great, it's pretty impressive for that time. There's a lot of shows and movies that try and do stuff like that nowadays that can't pull it off. So it's honestly really impressive. You brought up a great point, actually, and that was one thing. You were saying, you know, obviously now watching the movie, it can't be as impactful as it was when you had the 3D glasses on in the theater. And I think that's one of the things that does detract from Avatar. If you are someone like me that saw it in theaters, had that experience, it's hard to hit that bar again because the bar was so high. And the whole time I'm watching Avatar in my home, you know, I have a 60-inch HD 4K TV. It's great, you know. But the point is you know, I have a great setup, but it still pales in comparison to sitting in the theater. You can't match it. So that's something that, you know, for someone like you who didn't have that experience, it probably doesn't impact it as much. But for someone that's a little older that went and saw it, it might wear on you a little bit.
Yeah. What's great is that in his 4K 60-inch TV, half the time he's watching The Office.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I love to see Jim's pores. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, so let's talk about the worst visuals or kind of like worst sound, anything like that you have that kind of came up. Anything that stuck out for you?
So, no. And I actually wanted to hear what you said. I was kind of curious about your whole, dark, gloomy first 20 minutes. Yeah. And I think the whole point of that, and I think I said this in a previous video, is just to highlight those colorful moments in Pandora. I don't really see that as a negative, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, I don't think that the human scenes are shot in a negative way. They're just not eye-catching. And to your point, if they're using it as a contrast, they're doing a really good job because it's a very strong contrast. And I guess my point would be it doesn't need to be that strong of a contrast, or it can be contrasting in a different way that's still more engaging than everything just being gray. But no, I mean, really, honestly, the human stuff wasn't what bothered me as much. I wasn't a big fan of the animals, like the monsters on the planet.
Really?
I thought a lot of them, especially like the little black, like sketchy dogs that come out at night, they look so slick. Like they literally
did look pretty greasy.
They got sprayed by oil. Like they literally looked like they were just dripping in liquid. And even the bigger monster that chases him, makes him jump off of the waterfall. That's not a spoiler. And that one looks like it's coated in paint. And then the ones I thought were cool were like the hammerhead rhino. That thing was badass. But I thought was cool about it, that one was dry in texture. It had feathers. It had things like that. Even like, what are the names of the things? The flying, they call them banshees. I forget what the actual like nav'i term for it is, but the plain English is banshees. So the banshees, they look cool, they look badass. Even then, they kind of had like that liquidy thing going on. I think it's just an aesthetic that didn't rub me the right way. But yeah, I mean, obviously it didn't bother you that much. So I think it's probably a different strokes for different folks types of thing. I don't even know if this is a bad thing, but it's just something coming from a video game player. It felt like some sequences of the movie felt like a QuickTime event in a PS5 game.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, like where literally it was like, it's when you like slow motion to throw a grenade, it's like press X. I just feel like that was like the perfect setup. Like I felt like I wanted to have my controller in my hand and hit an input when he's doing certain things. And that's where that theater experience was so strong. Because you had these 3D glasses and you felt plugged in. You're like, oh, especially when they go into first person. Like, remember when they come out of the, when they're getting deployed onto the planet for the first time and it goes all first person? Mm-hmm. Like, that type of stuff, I think was designed with that experience in mind, to kind of give you that video game feel. Like, you're in the movie instead of just watching a character. Yeah. You know? Mason, what are your thoughts about soundtrack score-wise for this movie? Positive or negative? Anything really stand out?
It could have been put in any other movie. Like, nothing stood out.
I think that's totally fair. Actually, my notes were very similar. I had a couple of moments where I thought there was a couple of strong scores, like specifically when they're flying on the Banshees or if they're up in those floating mountains. They actually do a good job of doing a score that kind of like creates that wonder and mysticism, you know what I mean? And like, I feel like that kind of made my heart kind of flutter a little bit. And also the part, I don't want to get into it with the spoilers, but there's a really sad part and there's a character that's just wailing their heart out. And there's the really sad score behind that, and I thought that was a really powerful moment.
That was one thing I thought with like the heartstring stuff was
right.
Like it's good, it's there, but I don't know. I just don't see it.
It doesn't stick out like a Titanic, where something like the score may stick out, right? Or like a John Williams score, like on certain movies, like The Thing, which you haven't seen yet, but I'm really excited to get to that. We will. We'll cover that movie for sure. All right, Mason, what were your thoughts on the lead guy, Sam Worthington?
I thought he was fine for the most part, but a few times during the movie, his voice was like super monotone, and I feel like
sometimes.
Most of the time, his voice was super monotone, and I just felt like at some of the little emotional bits, I just couldn't take his emotion seriously just because of his monotone voice and his monotone tone.
You stole words out of my mouth, because that's exactly the problem I had with Sam Worthington. First off, let me just say, I don't think he has great range as an actor. I think you see him when he's casted in roles, he basically is always playing a jughead, like trying to be like an ex-military or a military guy or police, like something like that. And I think that really comes through in this performance. I know he's supposed to be an ex-Marine, but goddamn, some type of emotion, right? Like this literally, it takes until the 90-minute mark of this movie for him to raise his voice. Yeah. There's so much that happens leading up to those 90 minutes where he easily could have done it.
He's like, he goes into the Avatar bite, it's like, whoa, what's this?
Right. There's no like, I really had an issue, not only with the fact that he's monotone, but then he's the narrator, which is terrible. Like, if you're gonna have a narrator, I'm somebody, I firmly believe that the narration was not necessary in this movie. I think it would have been much better. And on my second viewing, I watched it looking out for, is this narration necessary? Or would this scene have been completely fine without narration? And I think everyone except for one of them would have been completely fine without narration. It would have, it's just hand-holding. And if you're gonna handhold people, at least make it entertaining. And don't just have it be somebody reading blandly off a freaking script. It's
an already bland actor acting like he's reading.
Right.
It's not.
Just, I wasn't a fan of him in terms of an acting performance. I think he mumbled a lot. Like he's got that marble mouth thing going a lot of times when he's narrating where things weren't clear. There's another little thing, but that tribal tattoo is sad. It's really bad. It's super 2000s. It's super heavy ink. You can tell it's fake. It's just bad. It's just bad all around. I'm not a fan of his character in general. Anything else to add? No, I think I said it all. Next up, let's talk about the villain of this movie, Stephen Lang. His name is Colonel Quaritch, but I call him Colonel Dickhead.
We'll just go with Colonel Dickhead.
I think it speaks so well to what his character is, and personally, I would say I think he's a great villain for this film. Some people might argue he doesn't have enough backstory. We don't know if he has a family. All we know is he did a few tours in Vietnam, and he's here to bust up some shit. That's really all we know about this guy. And I like it, to be honest with you. I think he's a great... They were just looking for the stereotypical military madman, and they got it. I think he was very well done.
I even think that too, that he just fit that stereotypical military general evil guy. But I do agree or disagree with some things that Alex said. I feel like he didn't have enough time to shine. He kind of came in at the last 30, 40 minutes, like formally introduced. And I feel like that wasn't enough time to build up character, build up backstory, whatever. He just kind of came in like, hey, this movie needs some tension. Let's have him shoot up everybody. And that was kind of the whole...
And what's really interesting is, I don't remember the first time I saw this movie, but, obviously having seen it before, I knew he was going to be the big villain. Looking at your notes from the movie, you noted that you didn't really think that the villain was really prevalent clear until about halfway through, right? And which obviously ends up, spoiler alert, ends up being this guy. Colonel Dickhead ends up being villain. Shocker. But I thought it was interesting, because I don't remember the first time I viewed it, if I had trouble interpreting that. I think now at this point, I've seen so many of these types of movies, the military complex dude is typically always the villain, so I kind of just knew. But I thought, I think it's an interesting point that, do you think that maybe if they did give him a little more backstory or establish him a little bit more, that it would have his appearance at the end more powerful?
Yeah, and I think already he's an intimidating character, but I just feel like if he had a little bit more moments to shine or build up what makes him intimidating, I feel like that would be, besides just the fact that he's the top of the military.
What about Sigourney Weaver? So I don't know if you know about the history of Sigourney Weaver. She is like the sci-fi queen because she was a star in the Alien movies, that Alien franchise, and that really was a huge success. And so that was kind of like, in my eyes, the significance of having her in this movie. She was a star power. She's tied to those sci-fi series of movies, so it was almost like a certification stamp that like, we're taking this for real. We got Sigourney Weaver. So we got Sigourney Weaver. We got Sigourney Weaver. I can't be the first person to have called her Sigourney Weaver.
What do you call it on accident?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. No. So Sigourney Weaver, I think she was a really strong performance. So what did you think?
I mean, she didn't stand out to me. I wasn't like, I don't know, to me, she didn't do anything.
I'll say this,
compared to everyone else.
No, but I mean, like, even just how she read her lines and delivered them was just so much more of a skilled acting performance than Sam Worthington or some of these other people. That was really my interpretation.
That's something I didn't notice. Either she didn't get enough time, like, to shine. I don't know.
I mean, right off the bat, where's my cigarette? What's wrong with this picture? That's awesome. That establishes, like, literally the first 3 lines we see of this character. We get her attitude. We know she runs shit. Yeah. Like, tight. Like, you can see. That's a really good acting for it. I guess it's a small little thing to take from it, but I really enjoyed it. And you know, I do think we could talk about more of kind of what happens during in the spoiler section, so keep an eye out for that. Let's talk about Zoe Saldana as Neytiri, who's a love interest. She's one of the nav'i who trains Jake on how to be a part of their society. What did you think of her performance?
I thought she was good. I thought Desi, during the end when she got really emotional, I thought that was great, and I thought just overall she fit that kind of sleek hunter character pretty well, like mysterious bad bitch type of character.
I agree. She's very strong but indecisive. I don't 100% understand and agree with a couple of her choices, but that's something we can discuss later when we look into the spoilers. Another character I wanted to bring up, just because I really like him as a performer. I think he hams it up in this movie, but Giovanni Ribisi, he plays Parker Selfridge. He's like the corporate guy in this. I've seen him. He's the villain in Ted 2. He has a few other smaller roles I've seen him in. He's a really good character actor. How do you think he did as kind of like the corporate overlord douchebag?
I mean, like you said, he hams it up. He definitely, like, over-exaggerates himself, but
100%.
I enjoyed him.
He's a super characterization. He's probably like the one dude in this movie who's the most out of place. Like, I think it's very much like the conflict is mostly between like the military side and the environmentalists, like the Society of Nav'is. But then you kind of just need like a reason to have this all happen, and they kind of need the corporate corporate aspect to drive the military side of it. So it was almost like a necessary part, but I think they did a good job of making him a little silly and, you know, over dramatizing it a bit. I thought he did a good job. Special shout out here to Michelle Rodriguez. She plays Trudy. She's the helicopter pilot that ends up working with the team, and she got famous from the Fast and Furious movies. She's just an awesome badass character. I think she has a few moments where she shines in this movie. And I just wanted to call her out because I love seeing her anytime in a movie. She's pretty cute too. Next. All right, so we are officially entering spoiler territory.
Spoilers.
Wah, wah, wah. So, at this point, we're going to start talking about the actual plot of the film. We're going to talk about, things that we liked, things that we didn't like, things that we might have changed, and we're going to really get into the meat of this. So, if you do not want to know about the plot of this movie, go watch it, go enjoy it, come back, check out what we have to say. What spoilery things would you want to get into in terms of plot issues or anything like that?
There's one thing I wanted to bring up, and I think you can basically take it over from here. I'm pretty sure we have the same thoughts going along. But the fact that they hired an amputee so I'm not like dissing any people in wheelchairs or anything, but if you're going into be very careful. If you're controlling a new body that has legs and you don't, and you have to learn how to use legs to operate this body, just hiring someone who doesn't have legs to hire a body or take control of a body who does have legs isn't a very smart idea.
Well, you do understand though that the reason they didn't choose, he wasn't their first choice. He was the only choice because he was the only one that had a DNA match to the Avatar. His twin brother was who the original Avatar was built for. He was killed in a robbery. he was the only one that had a DNA match to be able to do it.
Scratch that then. I completely fucking.
There's an explanation for
Next. Next. Cool. All right. Made fun of an amputee for no reason.
So no, but I would. So let's launch off that though, right? Because I think you bring up a good point. It is interesting the science of how these avatars work connecting with these humans, right? So you're a human, they build these avatars that are built with half nav'i DNA and half human DNA. First question, where'd you get the nav'i DNA? Second question, who figured out how to splice that together and make an organism? That's a freaking impressive thing to do. Number three, they basically explain that when they're connected through their nervous system and through their brain synapses or whatever. But they really don't like delve into the science of it. I'm a fan of that, honestly, because this movie's already 2 hours and 40 minutes long. If they spend another 20 minutes explaining the science how this shit works, I don't think it would have worked. So honestly, I think it was the right move, not explain the science behind it. I think there's definitely a lot of, if you want to nitpick the science of this movie, you could spend hours debating about how all this stuff works.
Overall, it's sci-fi, it's in the future.
Right, it's over 100 years in the future, at least. I think it's like 2150 something or whatever. So it's very far in the future, and so you can't just say you don't know what's going to happen over the next 100 years. You might get, look what's happened with medical technology over the last 100 years, or just cell phones. Things are crazy nowadays. So that's where I actually kind of like that with this movie, that they're just like, don't worry about that shit. We're going to give you a very just high level explanation of how it works. Just roll with it. And as a viewer, you really should. Because but if you want to nitpick, you always could.
One more thing that a little bit justify my wheelchair theory is he learned how to walk in the matter of like 2 minutes of getting out of the seat.
Right.
And I just kind of found that to be like, I expect that to be a whole dilemma of like him learning how to operate a new body with his legs and everything like that. But he just got up, walked, ran a few steps.
Well, not only that, he ripped out of all of his equipment. Like, he was strung up. He was originally on a hospital bed. He was on a gurney, and he just rips off, starts tossing people. That's one thing that didn't make sense to me. Why does he turn to a villain for 20 seconds? Why does he gets an evil smile on his face? Like, he gets kind of crazy. Like, he's like, I got legs, I'm gonna murder everybody. It felt like that. I'm just like, why is he doing this? And also, I'll also say this. What a shit containment job they have there. Like they have the door wide open. Doors wide open. They don't have somebody ready for with a tranquilizer. They have nothing. And even the other guy in the Avatar suit, he's like, they're gonna take you down, man. And nothing happens. And he just runs out the door, goes, does whatever he wants, interrupts a basketball game. No one cares. And it's just very, very odd to me that they wouldn't be better prepared for that scenario. Yeah. It just seemed very odd.
Especially with these 10-foot blue creatures.
Right, exactly. But to your point, not only was it weird that he instantly gets his motor skills that he's lost for who knows how many years, but just the total attitude shift once he gets legs is like, oh, now I can conquer the world because I have legs. Calm down, dude. A lot of people with legs out there.
Not our blue legs, though.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. That whole sequence is very weird. Just don't question the science behind it. Don't question any of that crap, because trust me, James Cameron did not want you to question it. He just wanted you to ride the ride.
All right, so if you want to take it over from here,
we gotta talk.
We have a lot of the same.
We gotta talk about something. So, all right, so one of the glaring issues I have with this movie is that Avatar is essentially just Pocahontas reloaded. It's literally the same plot, just remixed and put in the future. It's literally Jake Sully is John Smith, Neytiri is Pocahontas, the Unobtainium, which
stupid name by the way. Unobtainium because unobtainable.
Creative. Unobtainium replaces gold. Neytiri is set to be married to some douchebag guy she doesn't actually want to be with, falls in love with an outsider who strolls in. That outsider civilization swoops in to destroy everything. The outsider gets blamed for it. It's literally the same exact movie. And I understand maybe people in your generation that maybe aren't as into Pocahontas, maybe didn't get that reference, but it's something that bothers me every single time I watch it.
It's like they started the Disney live action movie trend kind of early with Avatar, almost, with the whole, they have now Lion King in real life, and now it's Mulan, but she has superpowers and it's in real life. But
that's a joke. Aladdin.
That's a whole nother
real life Aladdin.
That's a whole nother thing.
That was bad. But
it's I feel like for this movie though, it's I feel like to me, and especially to my generation, who a lot of people haven't seen Pocahontas, I feel like it's a good enough futuristic and modern twist, the story of Pocahontas, to be spread to people that are my age.
Yeah.
But Alex doesn't agree. He thinks that it's just.
I just think it's such a blatant ripoff.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough creative. There's not enough of a difference between the two to necessitate. I just would have liked more creativity. I would have liked if they would have put more spin on it other than just changing the name of characters, because it literally feels like that's all that happened.
Yeah.
I had some issues with the military leader's plan of sending Jake Sully in. He's gonna, I guess, be accepted into this tribe, and then once he's accepted, their plan is for Jake to basically be the middleman to negotiate them leaving the home tree.
Yeah.
So they can take it and take all the unobtainium. Why does having a middleman make any of that process of stealing their home and their riches any better?
You can just do it without the middleman and without all the information and whatever.
Exactly. I don't understand, and that's what they end up doing anyway. They end up just blowing up. Now, they did end up getting some useful information from Jake to take down the home tree through that whole thing, but I don't think that was entirely
anyway.
right, exactly.
And worked the exact same.
They didn't lack firepower, let's put it that way. So it just seemed like I don't understand what that main objective is to have him be a middleman, other than just make it seem a little bit better politically. But it seems like a lot of work that you're putting into this one person for something that's not really going to bring a lot of results.
Exactly.
It just didn't seem like a great plan, in my opinion. One thing you noted in your notes, Mason, that I thought was really big was Sigourney Weaver's character, Dr. Augustine. When she passes away, and kind of like her disappearing in this movie is a bit uneventful, right? And kind of anticlimactic.
It's like they react to it. I mean, one thing I've noticed is like usually if a big character dies, or a big moment happens, which they've done this earlier in the movie, is they have like big reactions and the characters get very emotional. They have big ceremonies and stuff honoring them. But it seemed like her death, it was just like 10 seconds after she died, they were like, oh, that's sad. Anyway, let's fight this. Let's go back to the war and let's go back to all this and let's take no time for Sully to like honor her death or care or anything. It just seemed like she died and then that was kind of it. And 10 seconds later, everyone forgot.
And then she was never worked back into the plot later on.
No.
Like there was no point in the third act where she comes back in like a spiritual form or like a memory form in some way. Whereas like in like, think about like what happens with some of the figures in like Star Wars where you see their ghosts at the end of the original trilogy.
Advice
right, exactly.
Something.
Yeah, there's something where they're referenced at the end. It just seems like kind of like Weaver's character is just kind of like just dust in the wind and once that happens.
Doesn't have purpose.
The only thing I could think of for a purpose was maybe to indicate, because you see that process doesn't work with her, but you see that at the tail end of the movie that process works with Jake. Yeah. I'm wondering if it's going to show, they wanted to create that little bit more suspense at the end of the movie to see, oh, it's not like a guarantee it's going to work for Jake because it didn't work for her, or it could be to show that AWA was only willing to help those that are truly part of the clan, and that Jake was fully part of the clan now, and that's why he gets revived at the end. That was just something that's what I thought of it could be, what that scene meant. But if it wasn't, then I don't get it. What were your thoughts in terms of like the length and the pacing of this film?
It was too long.
Yeah.
Like I thought, I mean, a lot of the, like, besides like, it wasn't like super action filled, which like the action would kind of break those boring dialogue and like those boring just scenery moments. But I feel like, especially because back then the big driving factor of the movie was how pretty it looked. But now, since that's like every movie, it's not keeping me as impelled as other movies would.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. And it's one of those things too that where, you know, I think there's a lot of big action set pieces in this movie, but they're contained to a certain number of scenes. It's not like you're kind of getting at. It's not continuous action. It's like, all right, big action sequence and then 20 minutes of dialogue. Big action sequence, 20 minutes of dialogue. And, you know, some that works for some viewers, but I think, especially for younger viewers, they're going to be looking more for that constant action and
or stress or tension.
Right.
But I feel like, and this is going back to the villain, he wasn't formally introduced until the last 40 minutes. And until then, it was just learning about the nav'i, which was interesting, but I kind of wanted to learn more about the planet and the villain and what we're actually fighting against and
Right,
Yeah.
right. Speaking of the villain, I wanted to get into that because I thought it was really interesting. You may have not noticed this, but coming back in this era, so 2009 we're talking about, this is Bush is out, Obama is in. We are, the sentiment towards the military and everything are not at a very high point right now.
Yeah.
And there are a few lines specifically in this movie that are uttered on the military side that are literally taken out of like the hot moments. So like, fight terror with terror. Do you remember when the military, I think the military leader said, or I forget what his name is, Colonel Dickhead at some point says, fight terror with terror.
Yeah.
And that was literally what people had bumper stickers of that shit talking about Iraq and talking about terrorism. So they're like, we're gonna fight terrorists by terrorizing them. Let's go bomb their country. Like so it was just funny hearing some of these mottos. And also like, there's another thing where Jake Sully says, make the people who have what you want into your enemy so you can justify attacking them. Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of people thought was happening in the Iraq war, that we wanted oil. Yeah. So we made the whole country have to be terrorists that were attacking us so that we can invade them and take their oil. It was a big part of the political discourse back then, and it wasn't a coincidence that those lines ended up in the script. I'll just say that. So it's just something I wanted to point out because I thought it was an interesting cultural in the moment thing that you probably didn't register for you, right? Because why would it? But I think it's an interesting point.
And yeah, I mean, a lot of those themes of like, of course the time frame was a bunch of war controversy, and I thought that like too much power and that kind of theme was pretty impactful, especially for that time. And I felt like that was kind of where this movie shined for me, and just showed how war can affect innocent people who aren't involved, but there's just bad apples or bad examples that can make them look bad.
Well, I'll say, especially during that war scene towards the end, there's that portion where they go into slow motion and kind of have that little montage where it's all different people dying, right? Like you have like the Avatar or the Na'vi prince dies. He jumps into like that plane and like they're trying to shoot at him. And also, I thought it was diverging one little thing. That scene, I feel like you forget over the course of the movie how much bigger the Na'vi are than humans.
I know.
And then he jumps into that plane.
He's like twice everyone's height.
Yeah, you're like, holy shit, he's huge. Like, I forgot.
Everyone in that plane with like one swoop of his arm.
Right, exactly. He literally just took his bow, and his bow cleared out 3 dudes. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they're huge. And I'm like, when they're shooting their arrows at the planes, and these arrows are so big, they're going through the glass hull of the planes. It's really, I don't know, that was just something that caught me off guard. But anyway, but it's really sad in that sequence where it goes slow motion, they're playing the somber music, it's the Banshee for Neytiri dies. It's really sad, and that whole sequence, I think, was really brought up in me, those emotions that you were just talking about, of makes you think about what is war about, what are we really trying to achieve, is it good for anybody? And I think this movie kind of looks at all the different angles of it in a good way. The cursing in this movie is really bad. It just sounds bad. Okay, so there's a portion.
Yeah, give us an example.
So here's an example. So let's talk about when Sigourney Weaver, her first scene where she's introduced, and she meets our paraplegic friend, treats him like utter shit, and then, starts complaining to one of our scientists saying that the corporate guy is pissing on him and not even telling him it's rain, and she says, I'm gonna go hold on, sorry, let me get this. This is bullshit. I'm going to kick his corporate butt. You just said bullshit. Why would you say butt? You would say ass.
You say ass.
That's what I mean. It's just a logical thing that doesn't make sense.
Booty.
Right, exactly.
His little stinker.
All right, so here's another example. So how about the scene where Jake goes out into the woods with them for the first time, and remember he starts to get charged by that hammerhead rhino thing, and then it stops and turns away, and then it turns out the other bigger one's behind him, right? Yeah, but what he says to the rhino before he realizes it's behind him, it's like, yeah, run away, bitch. It just is terrible. I was like, a 12-year-old write this? No offense. I was like, what the hell? I was like, this sounds terrible. I was like, James, come on. James, come on, James. You can do that. Come on. I was just like,
trash talking a big animal.
I think it's one of these things where you're trying to write, like there's portions where you're trying to appeal to different audiences, right? Like he makes this movie because he thinks everyone from age 80 to 8 is gonna watch this movie. So there's gonna be different portions of the script I think he kind of wants to I think that was one thing where he's like, I'm gonna make teenagers laugh when I write that, but it's just corny as shit. I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I just thought it was really weird. It made me laugh, but not in a good way. You know what I mean?
Now that you're reading it, I'm like, this is fucking stupid. But now that I'm like It didn't run through my head, I guess, when I was watching it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. One thing you kind of brought it up earlier, when you were talking about, he didn't have legs, he gets into this avatar, and then he's like sprinting within 10 seconds, right? So one thing I thought was interesting too is like way early, they really lean into this whole angle of him being, handicapped and him being in his wheelchair. So far, it's like people are making jokes about it. One guy calls him Hot Rod. Like, it's messed up. But as you progress through the movie, by like halfway through, it doesn't impact the movie whatsoever. By the time you get halfway through, it literally is immaterial, the fact that he's crippled. And it's just really weird for them to start the movie leaning into it, he overcomes it, and then like it never comes back in. It actually kind of, now I'm thinking about it, is similar to the Dr. Augustine thing, where she's pulled in, she disappears, and then it's never heard from again for the rest of the movie. I guess I kind of want some more throughness of that. Yeah. If you're gonna have that theme in the beginning, I think it's more conducive. Yeah, have it go all the way through. I think it's better than the or like environmental theme, like pro-environment, like that. Well, that made its way all the way through, that's for sure.
That made it all the way, but like helping and supporting paraplegics, no,
that's not good. No, not important. Basically the message for paraplegics in this movie is fucking pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get yourself an avatar, and go run.
Get yourself an avatar, have that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything will be cured.
One thing you brought up, Mason, I thought was important in the notes is that there's a really pivotal moment where Dr. Augustine is explaining to the corporate guy, what's it, Selfridge, telling him about this complex network that's built up between all of these trees and the systems and everything. And he basically just laughs it off as like, oh, you guys are just puffing on that piece of pipe. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, would you agree that that should have cracked through his thick skull?
Yeah. I mean, it's a scientist telling you a fact that she learned as a scientist. Right. I think as like a corporate general, I feel like you should believe her. Since you've been working with scientists all your life, you know her, whatever. And I don't know, it just made no sense to me. It just
well, I would add to that too. Yeah. Like, let's say even if he thought it was 50-50 shot that what she's saying is correct. He's a business guy. He should know how he could use that type of technology or functionality. That's essentially a super internet. It's like crazy that you can access memories and knowledge of everything in your past. You'll be able to access anything throughout your family lineage. Like, you could talk to your great-grandmother about what happened however long ago. So theoretically, we would have a network that could feed back up through Jesus and we could really figure out what happened in the Bible.
Yeah, or what happens when you die, or so many
all that type of thing. There are so many different types of things that you could access, and just think about it as a marketing tool. Imagine if you could reach the subconscious of the public and figure out what they like, don't like, past history lessons. That's a business. That's such a big business tool that you can market and monetize in so many ways. And the fact that he doesn't even think of that makes no sense.
You get a little bit greedy.
I'm just saying. When I heard that from like an IT person perspective, I was like, that sounds like a really unique system. That
I want to talk to my dead grandma. You're gonna have to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I don't know. I'm just saying that service is available right now. If that service was out there, you could charge a lot of money for it. That's all I'm saying. Couple little weird odds and ends. I'm just gonna fire on fast at you. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. I think it's really weird that the twin brother is just stored in a cardboard box and incinerated, and his brother just watches him be incinerated. Do you agree?
Yeah. Okay. No funeral, nothing.
No. Just literally, here's your brother. Close the lid on the cardboard box. Incinerator. That was the scene. Awesome. Just thought that was
the opening scene too.
That was the opening scene, just to set the tone. We talked about this a little bit earlier. They must have had some type of system to knock out Jake when he first became the Avatar and went full villain, right? Yeah. They should have had some type of like dart gun. They should have had an electric system, something around his neck, have him strapped down. I think it's complete utter bullshit that he just runs rampant and just runs out an open door. Yeah. That makes no sense to me. No sense. All right. Also, so last idea. You know the Icarans, the Banshees, the flying dragon things that they fly on? All right, so have you ever heard of the show Pimp My Ride?
No.
So Zim was a rapper, and he hosted the show on MTV, MTV2, whatever it was. It was called Pimp My Ride. Yes. And they would take people who had really shitty cars, and they would pimp them out and put big rims on them. And like if somebody would like really like fish, they'd put like a 20-gallon fish tank in their trunk. They would just do crazy shit. Put TVs on the back of them, like do everything, right? So my idea is, I thought that the Banshees looked really cool, and they all had these unique color schemes, and everyone looked different. what if they did a show on Pandora called Pimp My Banshee, and literally they just deck them out? Because I saw, you know, they're like horses. They get gear, they can get like helmets, you can put neon lights on them so you can fly at night, like flashes, put speakers on the back, you bump music while you're flying around. I was just thinking, if I had a Banshee, I would deck that shit out. That's all I'm saying.
Alright, fair. I don't know how many people have Banshees. I don't know what technology Pandora has. I don't even know if they have television.
I'm just saying, you can make it work. You can make it work.
Technically.
You can make it work.
It's not like everyone has a card, not everyone has a Banshee lying around. Oh, let me just get my Banshee.
On Pandora, you just gotta climb those little Holloway mountains, which is obviously easy. Yeah. That's one thing I thought was really silly. All he had to do was get a clean kill and do it in that way, and then all of a sudden, all right, you can fly. I thought that was kind of weird. That was the line. That was the barrier he had to jump over. I just felt like that was a big jump from making a clean kill of a deer, what was the equivalent of a deer, to climbing floating mountains to bond with a dragon that you're gonna fly with for life. I think that's a big jump.
A little bit.
I mean, I don't know. I never watched How to Train a Dragon, so I don't know.
Cool.
What did you think about this movie as a whole in terms of how it held up?
So visuals obviously held up really well.
Yeah.
I thought in acting and writing there were little iffy bits, but overall, I mean,
yeah.
Like,
run away, bitch. You're never gonna watch that scene ever again.
So besides talking shit to an animal, like a rhino, I thought overall it was just a good, like, sit back, enjoy the climax, enjoy the themes.
You like enjoying climaxes? Dude, that was bad.
Oh my god. I didn't mean it like that. You're bad for noticing that. Nobody watching this is going to notice that before you said it.
What you just said was, this movie's really good for enjoying the climax, which is how you describe porn. A bird just hit the window. All right, this is craziness. I don't know what's going on. This is some omen shit. Let's finish this before the ring girl comes out of the camera.
7 out of 10. Hold-upability.
7 out of 10?
7 out of 10.
Solid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would give a very similar score. I think this is a great family film. Throw it on, 2.5 hours of your life. Just sit back, enjoy it. You're not going to want to rewatch it probably. It's too damn long and it's not interesting enough to warrant a second watching. Yeah. If you want to watch something more efficient, watch Pocahontas. But overall, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10, which honestly I think is a pretty respectable score. Thanks for checking out this video.
Like and subscribe and let us know what you thought about the movie in the comments below.
Let us know if there's any movies you want us to watch. Who knows, maybe we'll watch them together.